Circles. Today we're going to talk about the parts of a circle. And then we are going to show you how to find the area of a circle and the circumference of a circle. And that will take, you will be able to complete this entire worksheet. This came in your email probably last Thursday or Friday. And the subject line will say circles. So here's just some vocabulary. Of course, you would probably guess that this piece is called the center of the circle. And if we go the length from the center of the circle to any point on the outside, like spokes on a wheel, the distance from the center to the outside of the circle somewhere, anywhere, there could be one there could be one there, wherever. This is called a radius. And if for some reason you may see the word radii, that's just plural. Plural for radius. That means a bunch of radiuses. Now let's talk about the distance all the way through the center. Now this distance has to go through the center from one side of the circle all the way to the other side of the circle, all the way across. This distance is called the diameter. And it will be important for you to notice that from here to here is a radius, and from here to here is a radius. So all the way across, which is the diameter, is 2 radii, okay? So the diameter is twice the radius. The radius is half of a diameter. That's an important piece of information for you to use. Okay, it's going to be very important to you. Now, we also have what we call a chord. A chord. And I think instead of putting all this in one circle, it'll start to get conglomerated. So let's do another circle here. And we have a distance that goes from one side of the circle to the other, but does not pass through the center. That is called a chord. And it can happen anywhere in the circle, but it is the length from one side of the circle to the other side of the circle, but does not go through the center. The diameter goes through the center from side to side. A chord, C-H-O-R-D, chord, connects 2 sides of the circle, but does not pass through the center. So you could even have a chord right here. Do y'all see? And the next piece of information, you can have a line or a segment that intersects the circle at only one spot, doesn't even go through the circle at all. It comes just like this. In the outside of the circle, and it touches the circle in one spot. This is called a tangent. Let me see. And, oh, the tangent, let me make sure. You need to sign in and go downstairs and see Shelley so you can take your CASAS test. Okay? And then you'll probably be back up here in time. So you can leave your stuff if you like. Okay, so go ahead and sign in here and you'll sign out here too. Okay.
What do you need? What do you need?
And then we have a secant. Let me make sure I tell you correctly.
You want that? Can you hear me? You can't hear me, right?
I can hear you.
You can?
Yes.
Okay.
That's okay, right? Do you need to speak to me about something?
No, I just need to put it on mute. My son came out here.
Oh, no problem. Okay, there is one more piece of information. One more piece. Notice that the cord stopped here and stopped here. Well, you're going to have another piece that does the exact same thing, but it's a line. It cuts through the circle at two places again, but this time it goes on forever. This stops at the edges of the circle. This one continues on and on and on. So it's just exactly like a cord, but it doesn't stop. And this is called a secant. A secant. So the cord and the secant are almost the same thing, but the secant goes on forever. The cord stops at the edges of the circle. And we want to make sure that you get all of those vocabulary words down in your notes, because I think it's page 2 that it asks you to identify these parts so that you can understand and remember what the parts are. Now, if you have your formula chart, you will notice that the next two things I talk about, the formulas are actually on your formula chart. So you're not going to have to memorize these, but you will need to be aware of what formula to use. Make sure you have all this stuff down. Are we okay? Yes, okay, I'm hearing yes. So now, let's talk about the distance around the circle. Now, about a week or so ago, we talked about a rectangle or even a triangle or whatever. We were trying to find the perimeter. And a reminder, the perimeter was the distance around a polygon, just the distance around. Around a polygon. If you missed the lessons on polygons, you need to go back and look at the YouTube video. Perimeter simply means we add the distance here, plus the distance here, plus the distance here. Just like if you were building a fence around this area, you want to know how long that fence needs to be. The distance around, you simply add the 4 sides to get the perimeter. Now we have the same thing in circles, but perimeter has to do with polygons. If you need to remember the P and the P, perimeter goes with polygons. Now on circles, we're going to need to find the distance around there also. But if you notice, it doesn't have the straight sides, which is the definition to polygon. So the distance around here, if I was to run this track right here, I need to know how far I'm going to run. then this is called circumference. Circumference is the distance around a circle. And what's kind of cool, I know it wasn't on purpose, but circumference and circle also. Perimeter is the distance around a polygon, P. Circumference is the distance around a circle, C. Okay, if you're into those kind of memory things. Now, there are two ways. They give you two formulas to find circumference on your formula chart. I don't want you to confuse these. They have actually given you these as just a help. So one of them says C equals 2 pi r. When things are crammed together, this is times, but they don't show the times signs. And the other one is circumference equals pi times d. Now, r stands for radius. And d stands for diameter. And if you remember, I want you to look at this. Radius, I told you, was just this. This is the radius. So they gave you this for convenience. They said, okay, if your picture or your problem that you're trying to work shows you the radius, then you can use this one. But if the problem that you're working shows you the amount of the diameter, then you can use this one. But if you look, they're really the same because diameter equals 2 times the radius. So it's really the same formula. But this is for convenience. So if the problem gives you the radius, use the radius. If the problem gives you all the distance all the way across, use this formula. Everybody, am I confusing you? I hope not. So let's do a problem here. And I want to find the distance around this circle. I'm going to talk to you about pi, so don't get frustrated. Let's say that your problem looks like this, and it says 4 feet. The distance from the center to the outside is 4 feet, and the distance from the center to the outside is called the radius. So what we're going to do is use the radius formula. C equals 2 pi r. If this is the formula, then we simply plug in what we know. The 2 is a done deal. It's in the formula. This is pi. And r happens to be, in our problem, it happens to be 4. Now, when everything is multiplied, you can move these numbers around. So I'm going to do 2 times 4 is 8 pi. Now let's stop here and talk about pi. Some of you already know what it is. Pi is a standard number in mathematics, and it is equal to approximately 3.14, which is very, very rounded. Pi is actually a number that continues on forever. It never repeats. It could continue on and wrap around this building and then go to Brownfield still. And it never would repeat. It's a huge number and it continues on forever and ever. But we abbreviate it 3.14. Or some problems use pi as 22/7. But what you're going to find out, and I want you to remember this for the GED test, your calculator that we use in our class and that we use on the actual GED test has a button on it that is a pi button. And when you press that pi button inside the memory, it will give you, you won't see them, but it will give you all of the numbers inside the memory here. Okay, if you push pi, the pi button is right here. See where the green button is? Go down, and here is the pi button. And if you need to use the pi button itself, you just push it. That's it. Now, what I did, I pushed the pi button here and said enter. And it says pi is equal to pi. Well, that doesn't help me at all. But if you'll remember, this calculator's pretty cool, and it has a toggle button right here, and I can toggle it to see the decimal. Now, this is part of the decimal that is equal to pi. Do you see the 3.14 right here? But it continues on, and there's not enough room for all of the numbers in here. But this is a start. Okay, this is what pi is equal to. And I also told you that pi was equal to 22 over 7. Let me get out of the way. Pi was also equal to 22 over 7. So let's see what happens there. If I put in 22 over 7, scoot over so I can get out of there and press enter, it will give me 22 over 7, which is kind of silly. And then I use the toggle button. Look at that. It still gives you very close to the pi button, 3.14. Okay, now here's what you're going to need to know. When you come across a problem that involves a circle, it will have a pi in the formula somewhere if it involves a circle. So what you need to do on the GED test, they will either have multiple choice answers that will be like A, B, C, D, something like this. And it will say 8 pi or 4 pi or 3 pi or 10 pi, okay? This is what I'm talking about is your answers will be in terms of pi. You'll use the pi button on your calculator. You can continue to use the pi button if your multiple choice answers are like 3.81, 4.19, 16.28, 7, and 1.222. Okay, if these are your multiple choice answers, then when you're working your calculator and you get a pi answer, don't freak out. If you need this answer, you simply hit the toggle switch and it will give you this. Or if you get a decimal answer and you need the pi answer, push the toggle button and it will give you the answer. Everybody understand? It will depend on how they put the answers in here, whether you use your pi answer or whether you use your decimal answer. And as you work these today, you're going to understand. Now, another thing I will tell you, that if you want the most exact answers, use the pi button in your calculations. Actually use the button on your calculator. But some of the instructions will say use 3.14 for pi. Only if it has this in the instructions, then instead of pushing the pi button, you're going to use the number 3.14. That's the only time you will do this. Otherwise, if it doesn't say this in the instructions, I want you to use the pi button because that will give you the most exact answer. Do y'all understand? Okay, so let's do this problem right here again. Let's go back. And it says the radius is 4 feet. So I'm going to use this formula. The circumference, if I want to find the distance around this, then I'm going to take 2 times, and it didn't say anything about 3.14. So I want you to use the pi button on your calculator right now and plug in 4 here. Now, when you plug this into your calculator, your answer on the calculator will come out 8 pi. And that's perfectly fine if all of your multiple choice answers are in terms of pi. But what if it's not? Then I want you to use your calculator and find out what the answer is for 8 pi. And you just push the 8 button and the pi button and press enter. When you do, this is what it gives me, and that's no help. So I'm going to use my toggle switch right here. And now I have the decimal. Now, usually in the instructions, they'll tell you what to round this answer to. And if they say round it to the nearest hundredths place, that means we need 2 decimal places after the decimal. So my answer would be, and you're going to see this also. This means approximately equal to, that means that you are rounding. And it's not the whole answer, it's just rounded. So this is approximately equal to 25.13. And since it's feet, that's what it is, feet. Distance around. So this answer, 8 pi, and this answer are exactly the same thing. But again, this is a more complete answer. This is rounded. But they're the same. I mean, both of them are correct answers. Any questions about circumference? We'll do one more on circumference, and then I want to move to finding area. So circumference again, let's make a different problem here. Circumference, if it says I want to find the distance around the circle, and they give me this information right here. Six miles. Then the distance from side to side going through the center is called the diameter. So you'll probably want to use this formula right here. Circumference equals pi times whatever the diameter is. And you're going to use all 6 miles here. So times 6, which will actually give you the answer of 6 pi. And that's fine if that's what's in your multiple choice answers. But if not, I need you to use a toggle switch and find that the circumference is approximately equal to 18.85 miles. Notice that my 5 was rounded up. If I want to give an answer to the nearest 100th, it's 0.84. But if I look at the next number, that's large enough to boot this up to a 5. So if you can't remember how to round, you need to go back and review rounding numbers and place value. So the circumference or the distance around here is almost 19 miles around if the distance is 6 miles. If the, diameter. The distance across diameter is 6 miles. Do you see? Okay, now what if you have a problem and they give you the diameter, but you don't have a formula that has a diameter in it, and you need to know the radius. So the diameter here is 6 miles. So how far is the radius? You need to know this. Somebody speak up. How far is the radius of this circle if the diameter is 6? Here is the radius.
Is it 2?
One more time. It's
4.
halfway,
3.
3 miles. There you go. So if you're given the diameter, but you have to have the radius in the formula, then you're going to use 3. Remember to do that. Don't just use a number because it's printed on the picture. You need to think these out.
Because it's half of the 6 miles.
Yes, that's exactly right. Are you guys okay with that? Everybody? Okay, now you have the formula for circumference, and you will have that formula on the formula sheet that you get to use on the test. Now we're going to move to a different type of measurement, and that's going to be the area.
Okay.
Oh, Brody. Hi, Brody.
Say
Where's
hi.
that little boy?
He's over here. Come say hi.
Hey, Brody. Hi, sugar. Hi. What'd he say?
That's mommy's teacher. Can you say hi?
Hi, teacher.
Hi, Brody.
You show
Nice
her your broken arm?
you. Okay. Now what we're going to do is circumference is only if I'm walking this track around here. I want to find out how far I'm going to walk. But now I'm going to find what we call the area. And that means all of this stuff in here. Maybe I want to know how much grass I'm going to plant inside of this circle. I need to know, this is called area, okay? All of the stuff inside is called area. So an area of a circle has a different formula, and it will be on your formula chart also. It says A equals pi, again, because it's a circle, you're going to have pi in it. R squared now. Pi r squared. Now, there's not another formula that has a D in it. This is it. If you want to find the area inside of a circle, you're going to use this formula. So let's draw a circle. And I want to find, this is 8 inches. Now, what is this called that goes from side to side through the center? What's this called?
A diameter.
Diameter. Well, this doesn't say anything about D at all, but this is the picture they gave me. So what am I going to do?
You got to, if it's 8,
I have
all the
to
way,
write it again.
we have to find out the half point.
Yes, yes, I need the radius, which is right here.
Yes.
So how much is it?
So if it's 4.
Yes, yes, it's half of the diameter. This is the radius, and this is the number that we're going to put in for R because that's the radius. And so we have A equals pi times R squared. Okay, so we're going to fill this in. I want to find the area equals the pi button times 4 squared. And if we remember our order of operations, we need to do the exponent part first. And so this becomes 16. 4 squared is 16 times pi. So your calculator would come up with 16 pi. Again, if your answers, multiple choice answers, are in terms of pi, then this is it. So use your calculator and find out the decimal in case they're in decimal form. So if it's in decimal form, the area is going to be approximately what? No pressure. Put this in
16.
your calculator. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, 16 times pi.
Yes. Now, when you press equal,
50.27.
very nice. It was 50.2654, blah, 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 blah. But if I want the answer to the nearest hundredth, I have to look at the next number, and it's big enough to push this up. And so Brandy answered correctly. The rounded answer would be 50.27. Now, since we're finding area and we use a squared in the problem, our answer is going to be inches squared. Area will always be answered in square units. Okay?
Hold on, baby.
Circumference is just units. Area is units squared. You okay with this? If it gives R in the picture, if it just said this, then you're going to use R if that's all they give you. But if they give you diameter, you're going to have to take half of it to be able to plug in the radius. Understood? Yes? Okay, good. So there is a word problem on here, and I'm going to show you what they're talking about. They said, and I don't remember the numbers, but I'm not going to worry about it. They said, okay, here's some grass. Okay, and they have a cow. It says tethered. It means he's on a leash. Okay, and he's on a leash. Let's do this. Okay, this cow is on a leash here. I don't know how to draw a cow. This is a cow. There he is. That's a cow. Tail. Okay, and this cow wants to graze, but he's tethered to the ground. So it wants to know the area of grass that this cow would be able to eat. So what we're going to do is say, well, the cow can eat all of this, right? But if he decides to move on, he can only move as far as the radius. Do you see? Then he could walk here, and then he could walk here. And so he can graze all of this grass and still be hooked up here to, well, that's supposed to be the center of the circle. So what we want to find is the area of grass. Let's say that the leash or the tether that he's on is 20 feet. 20 feet. And if I want to find out how much grass he can graze on, then that's called area. So I need to use the area formula equals pi times whatever the radius is squared. In this picture, if you can tell in the mess, what is the radius? What's the length of the radius? It's supposed to be the center.
10.
The radius is halfway.
Can you
So
hear me?
yeah,
Okay.
it's 20. They actually gave you the radius this
Oh,
time,
20.
so you don't have to half it. So now we have A equals pi times 20 squared. This is Sherry coming in. I got you.
So wouldn't it be 40?
Actually, do 20 squared on your calculator. You'll be surprised.
Okay, 20. $400.
400. Yes. So you have 400 pi. And that would be the answer if the multiple choice answers are in terms of pi. But if it's not, let's find out what the decimal is. So the decimal is approximately equal to what?
400?
No, it's 400 pi. Use your calculator, use your toggle switch. I need a decimal now.
I'm not sure. I think I've done something wrong.
Okay, let's look at it. I'll show you my. And this will be feet squared because it's area. Area will always be square units. The top number is just from another problem. I put 400 pi in and then used my toggle switch.
I didn't put my pi in.
Oh, that's kind of a have to. Hi, Sherry.
Good morning.
We're working on circles. So are there any questions with you guys about the parts of a circle, how to find the circumference and how to find the area? You think you're okay to start? I'm through with the teaching part, but again, my Zoom students are welcome to stay on. And I think that's what you're going to do, correct?
Yeah.
All righty.